All right then. Okay, so everyone, this is the last session of the morning. I'm all that stands between you and lunch now. So we're really going to give you something good to make it worth your while for, to thank you for being patient there. We've got our first panel of the day, Devising an Inflation-Busting E-commerce Strategy. Now, I don't need to tell you all, inflation is soaring. It's squeezed consumer budgets. Consumer confidence is at the lowest level it's been since records started in the 70s. And, as a result, people are cutting back. People are even, not making purchases that they would have made before. And, I'm sure many of you have seen that in your site metrics, in your sales figures. Already I've heard a few speakers, make a nod to those challenges, right? And I'm sure if you're looking particularly at the year over year, it's not looking pretty rosy, is it? And the reality is, the latest forecast from the Bank of England shows that it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. We've got the mortgage time bomb that's going to hit about 1 million households over the next 6 to 12 months. And, as merchants, as retailers, you're going to need a plan. You're going to need a plan to weather the storm. And, hopefully it's also going to be a plan that's going to let you thrive through that storm as well, okay? We've all been through it once with the COVID pandemic. We've got a few war stories that are going to help us. And, hopefully today from the panel, we're going to hear a little bit more. That panel, they've got 50 years of combined experience. They've worked in B2C, B2B, nationally, internationally. So I think there's going to be an insight here for absolutely everyone. Let me introduce them. First panelist I've got is Dave Gorman. He's Director of Global E-Commerce at Top Flight Football Club. For the past 10 years, he's driven their e-commerce strategy across web and app, continually improving the shopping experience for fans and shoppers worldwide. He also has 20 years of experience in the sports retail sector and 15 specifically in commerce. So first of all, a round of applause, please, for Dave. Second, I've got Suzana Bulearca. She's Managing Director at PBSL Group and Chief Marketing Officer at Build. They're a nationwide supplier of specialist building and construction products. Suzana has 15 years of experience in marketing, e-commerce, data, tech, both agency and client side. And she's built and led multi-skilled teams that focus on bringing together the best practices in those areas to do complete business transformation. So please, another round of applause for our second panelist, Suzana. And lastly, I've got Shaun Loughlin. He's Global Head of E-Commerce at LeMieux, which is a leading equestrian lifestyle brand. Now, Shaun, as you can imagine, also has a lot of experience to share with you. He's got 20 years hands-on in retail, e-commerce, digital marketing at director and head of levels. He's built multiple award-winning e-commerce teams, worked in every area of digital, and he's even spoken about e-commerce at 10 Downing Street. So, a bit of a step up for him today, okay? Last round of applause, please, for Shaun. All right, then. So thanks for being here, guys. We're going to have some softballs, maybe, to start off, and then we'll get into the tough ones. But, I believe to create a strategy, obviously you know where you want to head to, and it's all about then creating the plan to get there. But you also got to know where you're setting off from. It's useful to understand kind of where your business is today, maybe, what you've gone through already. So, let me start with you, Suzana. I mentioned already about how this is similar to the COVID pandemic. How do you think maybe it's a little different to what we saw then?
So it's actually quite different for us. We've been through various stages of frustration. So when COVID hit, we had a lot of demand to the point where websites were falling over, and we were getting orders that we would get in a day in the space of 2-3 minutes. But then we struggled with capacity, and obviously there were all sorts of restrictions for health and safety, people working from home, tech issues. We then went to the next year where we didn't have enough product. because of the container crisis situation, oil price, all that sort of stuff. Demand was still there. So it was kind of a good problem, but a frustrating problem because we could have grown a lot more and we had some constraints. But we were in a good place because we had the online platform, which many of our competitors didn't. So now it's a bit different because there is a platform, there is product, but demand is dwindling. And that is the scary one where, you know, competitors are going to become a lot more aggressive, maybe even desperate. Weird things are going to happen. And this is the one where you need to be super smart at gaining as much market share as possible, because there is still demand, and especially for us in the building industry, people are still going to build less, you know, people are still going to build and improve, but you just have to be smarter at it.
Absolutely. Dave, let me come to you. I said in the intro there about, you know, maybe people in the audience have seen, you know, numbers that aren't looking too great. What do you think, you know, what kind of KPIs, what kind of metrics do you think they ought to be monitoring to kind of understand kind of where they are and to see how things are going to evolve over the next kind of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think on a day-to-day, it's the obvious ones. It's your NPS, it's your conversion. But I think the ones in the current times that kind of add the most value is the qualitative data that you're capturing, and then that digital experience insights that you're gathering, really to kind of drive your e-commerce strategy forward. So yeah, I think the consumer knows best, the customer knows best, and making sure you're taking on and trying to capture as much data as possible to make those decisions is really important.
Yeah, so not to get too hung up on those kind of trailing numbers, try and understand further up in the funnel.
100%, you've got to listen to your customer.
Yeah. And Shaun, you know, in terms of kind of being aware of what's going on, you know, what are maybe some of the pitfalls, the blind spots that, you know, might easily be missed by people?
I think the key one is understanding the impact of discounting on retention and brand, because we're in a discount-heavy environment, and customers acquired on the basis of a discount are going to have a lower retention rate typically, unless they're incentivized to purchase again. And if you're not careful, it's very easy to end up in a situation where you have a database full of newly acquired customers who only repeat purchase if they're incentivized to do so. And if the business isn't geared up to manage that and to deal with those lower margins, you can end up in a very difficult situation that's actually quite hard to get out of.
Absolutely. And, you know, Suzana, just to kind of make this, you know, less about data a minute, about the people using that data, you know, we've heard Janice earlier talking about, you know, the way that this can be a team sport. Are you finding the kind of response you're having to put together in the business is requiring kind of more individual leadership? Or is it becoming more kind of cross-department, kind of collaborative in order to kind of have all eyes and ears on it?
As always, the answer is both.
Yeah.
So we're also, as much as the market is changing, we're also going through some changes in the company to make improvements. So it's all of it. There is leadership that's needed to set the vision and make sure that everyone believes in it and is focused on it. There is individual management, so you can get these key people in key departments to buy in and be your ambassadors so they can propagate that vision. And then there is a lot of cross-department collaboration, because when you don't have that much resource and money to spend on, you know, more people, more things, then people start to take multiple roles and start to help each other and start to, you know, teams that would never work together before, they start to think, oh, okay, how can I help those guys? I don't know, how can I help the drivers? And I'm tech. Never think like that before, so definitely all of them.
Yeah, okay then. Now, you know, next thing I want to look at here is planning priorities. You know, thinking about, you know, we've got this evolving situation. As I've already explained, you know, we're already kind of since late 21 and since the mini budget last year, seeing the impact, but there's more to come here. We need to, you know, obviously do what we've just spoken about, be aware of the changes, but we need to be able to kind of respond to that with our plans as well. They need to be equally dynamic, you know, while also not losing sight of the long-term vision. I think something, and, you know, that's a little bit of an issue is I feel like it's that stick or twist moment that we saw with the pandemic of, is it time to batten down the hatches and try and weather the storm, or kind of double down on investment? Shaun, can I come to you and get your view on that?
I think if you can afford to, you should be doubling down, because most other businesses are going to be pulling back. Meta CPMs on reach and engagement campaigns are at a 3-year low, and that's simply because people are pulling back spend in the mid and upper funnel. And if you can afford to keep going, and it's going to be expensive and painful to do so, but if you can, you're going to come out the other side of this with increased market share in a much, much stronger position.
Yeah. Suzana, can I just get your view on that as well?
Yeah, so completely agree with that. The crisis will end. This is all cyclical. It will end, and at the other side of it, you've either completely messed up your business by pulling out investment from key areas, or you've really gone for it and grown. But there are ways to, instead of doubling the investment, you could just invest here and then make some savings there. You could be smart about it.
Great. Dave, another thing that we see is that people start to kind of reduce the horizon of their planning. They're not willing to kind of make commitments that are too far out. How far ahead are you kind of planning, committing at the moment, and what's influenced that?
I think within e-commerce, you can't afford not to look ahead. I think as we've seen from some of the earlier talks today, no e-commerce journeys are perfect. There's always ways we can and things we can do to kind of improve that overall experience. So I think it's really, really important that you kind of have very clear kind of goals, and if you don't do continuous development and improve your journeys and your platforms, there's the risk that you're going to get left behind. So I think planning is really, really important. I think my teams know kind of what the goal is to kind of deliver, if it's a feature development in the next 3 months. And we're quite rigid in terms of working in from a business as usual perspective, with sprint goals and working in that 2-week cycle of continuously delivering. And that's kind of across app and web. So yeah, I think it's really important that you also look ahead. What's the next thing that we need to implement across the entire journey?
Not get caught out there. Dave, can I also kind of follow up? I asked the question previously about kind of KPIs. I'm interested, in terms of people kind of setting out their roadmap and kind of working from a vision down through particular kind of KPIs they want to drive. Which ones do you think are becoming harder to work on, and why?
Yeah, I think I said it at the start. Conversion. I think conversion is becoming harder to measure with cookie laws and the kind of the way that you measure how different channels are conversing as well as you add more channels into the mix. If you've got app and web, for example, it does become really challenging in terms of how you measure something that was so core to kind of business cases. So I think it's becoming more and more important to kind of show the value to your exec teams of why we're doing this development, what are the goals, showing the deliverables of what it's delivered for the overall business. And yeah, I think being able to then articulate that to ensure that you can continually invest in the product is really important. And it's not just about revenue, it's also about the NPS and that overall experience, because if you neglect that, then those single purchases potentially are not going to be multi-purchases. So it's really important.
Suzana, can I just ask one more question in this section to yourself? PBSL, obviously online presence, physical presence as well there. How do you think kind of the approach to planning is going to differ for a pure play versus somebody who can operate, omnichannel?
So omnichannel comes with benefits and pluses and minuses. So the plus is that we found usually if one area is affected, let's say the branches, then usually the web area will kind of compensate. So we can still plan ahead, we can still kind of maintain investment by financing one part of the business with the other part of the business. And equally, it's good to share learnings, because usually one side will see the effect of something, some sort of behavior quicker, and then we have enough time to take that learning and mold the strategy on the other side to apply and then just incrementally improve. But equally, the problem is you are dealing with a lot of stuff and everything has to progress at the same time. So you have to invest in everything. You can't just say, oh, I'll leave the websites, I'll just focus on the branches and we'll meet back in 2027. So that requires a lot of investment and rationalizing of budget and thinking, okay, what's the biggest impact in each area and giving love to each area so that we can...
So you've got to spread that investment, a
yes.
bit more. Yeah.
You have to spread it, but still focus it. So yeah, it's an art. Yeah.
Now, I kind of feel that deep customer empathy might be one of those secret weapons, that it's kind of one of those areas where, as we've heard from Matt already, that understanding the customer better, they're the ones struggling with the crisis right now. Therefore, they're the ones, by understanding it, hopefully there's a way, something we can unlock with conversion. Shaun, let me come to you first. What do you think can be done to maintain a fresh understanding, given that customer mindset is evolving the same as the situation?
I think constant, consistent, qualitative analysis. We're all very focused on quantitative. We all spend far too much time buried in Google Analytics, buried in spreadsheets, looking at business intelligence tools. If you want to understand customer intent and customer mindset, you have to speak to them. You've got to do surveys, you've got to do interviews, you've got to do user testing. It's laborious and it's tedious, but if you want to truly understand what's important to your customers, you've got to speak to them, and you've got to be doing it regularly so that you have a benchmark of customer sentiment. And as the kind of head of e-commerce or director of e-commerce or whatever, you're at the cold face. You're at the point where the customer is putting their hand in their pocket and spending money. You're getting insight that's unbelievably valuable to the rest of the business, and you should be collecting it.
Yeah. Dave, you mentioned about, listening to customers already. Have you got thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I think we're in an age, aren't we, where we're overwhelmed with the volume of qualitative feedback that we can gather. And I think it's quite easy for, say, an e-commerce team to kind of sit on that and not share it with the wider business. So I think it's really important when you kind of get in hundreds and thousands of product reviews, for example, or survey results, to kind of share that with marketing, overall product development and other teams within the business to kind of ensure that knowledge is being shared, not just to improve a user experience on the website or app, but to improve the overall products that we sell as well. Yeah,
so to try and have an impact by lifting the entire type business there. Let me ask you then, Dave, what are you hearing from customers at the moment? What do you hear that might be relevant to the whole audience?
I think with some of the recent surveys that we've done within areas like checkout, it's been kind of things like not ready to purchase. So I think in terms of understanding that and kind of where you channel the users next is really important. So I think not getting too bogged down into that, but all good brands kind of channel users into other areas as well to kind of increase that engagement with the brand as a whole, because if you can make it clear what your USPs are, but then keep them interested in the brand, then when they're ready to purchase, you'd hope that they're going to come back to you. So I think not getting too dragged down into why someone isn't converting, but looking at how can you get them engaged, and there's those obvious barriers: increase product cost, increase shipping charges. So yeah, kind of engagement is really important, and that's a big reason why I 12 months ago launched an app, because as acquisition costs are becoming higher and higher, getting people into the app, and that's now around 16% of revenue for the business that I work for, and it's something that we kind of put a lot of emphasis in.
Yeah, and Suzana, looking at maybe through a B2B lens, is there a similar sentiment, a similar kind of feedback coming from kind of business customers as consumers, or is it something completely different?
So in the building industry is obviously a bit different. Consumers kind of behave the same, but the builders, tradesmen, contractors, obviously that's their livelihood. So they have been working to build a pipeline for themselves. So they're a bit more of a resilient audience. It doesn't just kind of die down from one day to another. But at the same time, their business becomes more difficult to get. So it's not that they're not ready to purchase, they are. They just suddenly want either the best deal or the speediest delivery, the least amount of problems, the best product, and they are being targeted by, they're being targeted by our competitors very aggressively. Everyone's now going with reps and going into tradesmen and trying to convince them to buy from them. So relationships have become super important, and being very proactive at, okay, what can we do to help you? How can we diminish the friction?
Yeah.
It's more challenging.
So a big focus there on the account management.
Yes.
Part of it then,
Yeah. So tech can do only so much, and then you have to have the people.
Shaun, let's just put a little twist on that account management thing there. Think about loyalty and retention. What kind of tactics do you think should be on everyone's radar at the moment?
I mean, talking from a brand perspective, for us, it's engagement. Dave mentioned it a minute ago. Like in consumer packaged goods, particularly fashion and sports equipment, your average customers are 2 to 3 times a year they're ordering from you. That means you've got a 4 to 6 month gap in between where you serve no purpose to them. So trying to come up with ways to keep them engaged with the brand and stay front of mind, outside of simply emailing them every week saying, please come back and buy. That's where our focus is at the moment. So that's things like community, events, gamification, content. We're looking at things outside of, points win prizes style loyalty schemes.
Yeah, okay. Now I want to move on a little bit into kind of more kind of tactical things, maybe things that people could work into their roadmap. And I want to start with acquisition first, start with the top of the funnel. Shaun, let me come back to you here. I'm sure everyone's seeing kind of the ROI of their campaigns, not be as good, that, and that starts to falter. There starts to be questions about, where budgets should be spent and whether budgets should be reduced. And we've already spoken about doubling down versus battening down, right? Yeah. It's tempting to look at marketing and go, that's the place to cut. Why do you think that's a risky move?
From a brand perspective, it depends where you're cutting. And the first thing to go tends to be hard to attribute channels like top of funnel, brand awareness, reach, engagement style campaigns. But if you cut those, you will find your bottom of funnel tactics, which get most of the last click attribution, they'll start to die off because you're not creating that brand demand at the top of the funnel. They're not going to filter down to the bottom. So it's very easy to cut that top of funnel brand awareness spend. Overnight, nothing happens. The business carries on as usual. Your FD is probably very happy because you've cut down marketing costs. But 3 to 6 months later, your CPAs will start going up. Your customer acquisition will go down. And it's because you're not generating that demand.
Yeah. And Suzana, we heard in there about channels and how, it can be tricky to pick and choose there. If you're forced to focus on fewer channels, which ones do you think are going to be more reliable in terms of delivering results, in terms of delivering the right kind of traffic?
I mean, it really depends on every business. If you're looking just at, your last action acquisition, then you've got search and you've got affiliates and stuff like that. But, it really depends on the business. But the way that we look at things is we have our business objectives and our initiatives that obviously are there to drive revenue and the business forward. And then we kind of group our channels and, tactics into categories of some that are very directly correlated to these initiatives and will have the most visible impact on revenue. And then some that are at the top of the funnel and feed these. So, as Shaun was saying, these will dry up without these. And then there are some that have a support function. So it could be tech, infrastructure, people that support that sort of thing. And then is kind of playing them off each other in a way. So you use these ones to drive your revenue to then have enough money to invest in these and in these, and then they support them, and it's just kind of this whole loop. So you just have to group them and know what you're, and exactly as Shaun was saying, you know where you're cutting if you need to cut, and then you know what the impact of that cutting is, and you know where to come back to where if you're suffering and you've maybe cut too much.
Yeah. Can I ask you another question, Suzana? Good marketing relies on, good, insight about the customer, having a really great profile there. We've heard already about, the impact of issues with cookies. I want to talk about zero-party data and the role that can play in terms of, looking to build that up and using that to deliver, better quality, more relevant marketing to those channels.
So super important for us. Consumers are more used to sharing information, but as a tradesman, less keen to share a lot of personal information, like why do you care about my birthday? But they will share some things that are relevant. So say if we ask them what sort of trade type or what sort of projects they're involved in, or what sort of customers they deliver their work for. So they will share certain types of information, and we've actually, in the last year, we've been on a path to devise a way to collect that information better and action it, because we found we had tons of information here and there, and we weren't doing anything with it. So now it's very important, to be smarter, to actually take that information and do all sorts of correlations to be relevant to them, and again, to be helpful. And if they see that you collect information that it could be helpful to them at some point, then they will share it. So that's what we're trying to.
Dave, let me come to you. Obviously, we think about acquisition, and often the first thought is thinking about new customers coming into the top of the funnel. But the reality is, we can also fill it by, looping customers round, getting those repeat purchases, those multiples happening. What kind of stuff are you doing to encourage that kind of loop?
I think the app that I mentioned earlier that we launched last year has really helped in terms of kind of driving that journey. But I think what's even more important is that post-purchase journey as well. Because if you lose the customer with basic things, I like to use the phrase brilliant basics, then there's a high percentage chance that they're not going to come back to you. So I think, as well as the user experience on the front end, that post-purchase journey is really, really important, and that's going to be one of our key focuses for the next 12 months, to kind of get back to basics and really improve that post-purchase journey.
So you're looking there, your delivery, your customer support, what kind of other things?
100%. So looking at how can we reduce contact to contact centre and things like that, making the process more streamlined. So if you've got an order where there's a pre-order item and there's an item that is ready to be shipped straight away, kind of making it very clear, kind of, I hate to use the phrase Amazon, but in terms of the way that they do it, in terms of being very clear in messages in checkout, and then the post-purchase journey as well, just to ensure that you're reducing that contact and making it easy for people to come back and shop again.
Okay. Now I've only got time for a couple on merchandising, and because I want to get to some tactics to do with optimization. Let's talk about promotions here. Shaun, you mentioned it earlier, that the risk here, but I want to come to Suzana on this one. How do you see promotions being used as a tactic to help with retention and lifetime value? So
we've actually trialed this last year or a couple of years ago on Black Friday. What we were previously doing was it was a blanket promotion for everyone. Acquisition or retention didn't really matter. And then we decided to trial just for retention purposes, and we did, again, is coming back to data. So did a lot of analysis of spending patterns, grouping customers, and segmentation into buying behavior, and then we offered promotions that were relevant to the products they were buying, correlated to the industry they were in. Are you a roofer? You're buying only gutters from us. you should be buying some roofline as well. So we're trying to increase that package that you buy from us. And also it becomes more useful to you because our customers are notorious for not, they come into the branch or they go on the website, they see a big piece of gutter and they don't know we do guttering because they just buy drainage. So it's kind of being helpful to them as well to improve their project purchasing. So yeah, we've done that test and that worked really well actually, more profitable for us. So that's the kind of route we're going down on, it's customizing these promotions powered by data.
So getting that kind of, that amplification of putting the personalization with the promotion for better relevance and engagement. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Shaun, let's come back to you then. You said earlier, that discounting is rife out there at the moment. How do you think people can avoid becoming dependent on it? And dependent on using it as, a short-term fix for boosting sales?
I can tell you what we're doing, which may not be relevant to all businesses, but what we found over an extended period of time is that we either lose the money in lost margin through discounting, or we lose the money through investing in marketing and new customer acquisition. And if you measure it over a long enough time, the net effect on a gross profit level is pretty much exactly the same. So we've just simply moved the budget away from discount margin loss into top of funnel brand awareness and growing new markets. And we found out that net we're in exactly the same position with increased margins long term, because we've now got a database full of customers that have been attracted to the brand for the appropriate reasons, and increased international expansion. So that's the route that we've gone down, which I appreciate may not be feasible for all.
Yeah, definitely. There's room for discounting, but it's, maybe, there's a risk of kind of affecting the brand.
Yeah. There's always products that won't sell. There's always end-of-lines clearance that needs to happen. There's always a place for discounting. It's just not making it a cornerstone of your customer acquisition and business growth strategy.
Okay. Now I want to move on now to optimization. There's been a little bit of a theme here of, customer budget is squeezed, the FD's knocking on the door saying your budget is squeezed now as well. I definitely feel like, something that that cuts through a lot is then needing to get more for less. And optimization to me feels like an opportunity to do that, to say, well, instead of building something new, let's take what you've got and let's tune it up. Let's get some extra mileage from it, okay? Dave, let me come to you first. When it comes to optimization, it's I always like to kind of build a bit of a backlog here. A little bit like we've heard it earlier from Janice, get those ideas from different people coming in to figure out where it's good to invest. Where do you get to your ideas from, so you feel like you're coming with stuff that's innovative and actually going to drive you forwards?
Yeah, I think something that I encourage my team to do as a whole is share ideas. So we've got quite simple Teams chat where if anybody sees anything, a good experience within the industry, then we share it and talk about it. And like I say, within any business as well, within e-commerce specifically, everyone's a consumer of e-commerce. So I think listening to kind of feedback across the board, but I think really encouraging your teams to feel like they've got a voice and they can share their ideas for improvement. It can be really powerful. So I think that's been really successful for us in terms of building out our roadmap and across the entire team from trading, marketing and products, all working together and collaborating on ideas.
Yeah. And Suzana, come to you, one of the problems here is going to be, whether to try and improve everything or whether to just kind of focus on key touch points and really get those sharp. Which approach do you think's better for kind of targeting your optimization, your split testing?
Well, obviously for us, because we have many websites and many branches, we have to kind of spread the investment a bit. But in each area, we're focusing it. So I would always say focus on what is going to give you the maximum impact. And that's not just optimization of features, it's also optimization of your time, team's time, and that sort of stuff. So target a few key touch points that are going to be mostly correlated to, again, it comes down to your business objectives and initiatives.
And Dave, I mentioned in there about A/B testing. You know, that's, you know, one way to do optimization in a way that where you get to learn and actually understand the impact there. You know, do you think that's a bit of a silver bullet for businesses that are seeing their budgets limited?
I think it's important, but I also think you kind of, we call it a program roadmap, should really be aligned with your product roadmap as well, so that the multivariate tests that you're doing are really influencing that product roadmap, and they kind of go together hand in hand. I think we've also found value in fake door tests as well, to kind of find out from are people actually going to use a feature before you go and build it, which can definitely save a lot of budget and development time if the customers say no. So yeah, I think it should be part of everyone's product roadmap, and the two go hand in hand together. Yeah.
It's a great idea there, using the fake doors as a kind of super low cost prototype there. I love that one. I just want to wrap up with one more question just from each of you. You know, when it comes to strategy, like, I'm a big believer in focus. You know, focus on less and then get more done. I just want to go down and kind of like ask each of you to just give me a response to this, which is, you know, if you're setting your strategy for the next 12 months and you could only work on improving kind of one thing, one part of your e-commerce strategy, what would that one thing be? Let's start down at Shaun's end.
We use what's called a RICE model, which is risk, impact, confidence, and ease. Risk and ease are scored by our website development team, which is risk to the tech stack and ease of development. Impact is the potential impact in a best case scenario. And then confidence is how confident you are in that being achieved, because there's developments that could be game changing or could be, you know, nothing. So the E score keeps that under control. And then you just add them together, listed in priority, and you will see very quickly that the low-hanging fruit floats to the top, and the stupid idea that's the hot thing in the office right now filters down to the bottom.
Yeah. So that's how you get to your one. Suzana, what's going to be your kind of top thing on the strategy for the next 12 months?
We probably have a less sophisticated model to evaluate, but kind of something like that. But I would say for us, applying data is the key, which it sounds a bit generic because it is applied in various areas, but again, it does really quickly. Once you do the proper analysis and you use proper software for it, it very quickly comes to light that, okay, we should be doing this. This is an area that we're completely missing, and yeah.
And Dave, last thought from you?
Try not to be too obvious. I think, as I said earlier, I think app-first approaches and mobile is a key focus for us, but I think a non-obvious answer would maybe, I think, product details pages, because I think we've kind of fallen into the trap where one fit product details page covers all products, but that's not the case. So I think we're doing some testing around that at the minute to kind of, for different types of products, do they have video, more images, but then also audience groups come into the site, different product details pages for those audiences as well, because I think we fall into the trap somewhat sometimes that everyone's going to know what the brand is, what the product is, but yeah. I think, again, going back to brilliant basics and trying to focus on areas like that can add real value.
It feels like customers are going to be looking at the moment for, you know, value for money. Like, you've really got to convince them of that product value to them, whether that's a high ticket or low ticket. And so I can definitely understand why PDPs could be one of those 100%. Unloved areas to go look at. Well, that's it. That's all the questions I've got and all the time that I've got today to ask them. Our panel are going to be around for the rest of the day. I'm sure they'll be upstairs getting some lunch in a minute, so you can collar them if you've got questions. But as I mentioned there, it is lunchtime. That's going to be upstairs in the marketplace. If you've not been there already this morning, that's up in the mezzanine and round to the left. And sessions will be back here again at 1:45. So go and enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much, everybody.